Hi guys and welcome to this lesson. In this lesson we're going to be discussing how to set up a cloud development environment so that you can create and run and deploy Ruby on Rails applications in the cloud. So we've already looked at how to set up a development environment locally, so on your PC or on your Mac. In this lesson we're going to look at how to set up a cloud development environment. So one of the great things about a cloud development environment is you can log in from any machine and have all your settings, all your information there waiting for you. You don't have to save it, you don't have to move it onto the cloud, excuse the pun. You don't have to move it onto the cloud. It's all here, you just log into the browser and that's it. It's all here waiting for you. So for our cloud development environment, we're going to be looking at AWS. Now there was a time when installing Rails on an Apple or Windows machine was a very time consuming process, and I don't use that phrase lightly. You could spend days getting set up. But thanks now to obviously to modern technology and the leaps and bounds that the Rails community has made in the last few years, and as we're going to see now in a few minutes, the Amazon Cloud 9 platform, you can install Rails in minutes, and it really is fantastic. So the Cloud 9 workspace comes pre-configured with most of the software that you will need for Rails development, such as Ruby, Ruby Gems and Git. The only piece of software you will need to install is Rails, which is great for us because it means that you can install the version of Rails that is used in this lesson and all the lessons to come, which means that you can be sure we're all using the same version of Rails so that any code that I type in and any code that you copy is going to work. Getting set up with Cloud9 is relatively straightforward, but a word of warning, Cloud9 is free for 1 year only, and when you create an account you will need to provide your credit card details as a means of payment in the future and to prevent account abuse. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about or signing up to Cloud9. So I have it here open on my desktop and it's open in Chrome. So on a Mac I found that Safari can cause a little bit of trouble with Cloud9, so I have it here. So as you can see, I've gone to aws.amazon.com, so there's the URL in my browser. Now, you can do a couple of things. Let me just hit back there. You can do a couple of things here. You can highlight over products, you can go down to developer tools, and as you can see, there's Cloud9 here on the right hand side, just here, AWS Cloud9. Or you can hit the icon here to search and you can simply type in Cloud9. So there it is there, third one down, hit that. Then once you land on this page, simply press the button Get Started with AWS Cloud9. Now I already have an account, but if you don't, you can set up an AWS account here. And just keep in mind that sometimes it can take a few minutes, even 24 hours to get your account fully set up. For me, it took less than 10 minutes, but I have heard of people where it's taken in around 24 hours. So just keep that in mind. And as you can see, AWS account includes 12 months of free tier access. And as I said, after 12 months, depending on your usage, you may need to pay. So I'm going to sign into an existing AWS account. And here we are now on the home screen. So as you can see here, recently visited services Cloud9. Or if you don't see anything here, which you probably won't if you're signing in for the first time because you've no recently visited services, you simply type in Cloud9. And there it is there. Okay, so here we are now on the Cloud9 homepage. I'm not going to go through it here, but I encourage you to take a look around and have a look at the Getting Started tutorials and all the information, benefits and features that you can see here, all the information on Cloud9. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right in and hit Create Environment. You can see here when we log in, AWS root account login detected. Don't worry about for that at the moment. We'll get to that in a later lesson. I'm just going to cancel out of that. So the first thing we need to do is give our environment a name. So I'm just going to call this Rails_app. Okay, description. So test app, there we go. Next step, you can leave these first two settings as they are, but when you get the platform, make sure you select Ubuntu server and not Amazon Linux. That's pretty important. Leave the remaining settings as they are and click next. Okay, so then it gives you a summary of what's about to happen. So it's going to create a new environment, Rails app, test app is the description, the environment type, and the platform it's going to be on. Okay, so we're happy with that, so create environment. And there we go, we just give it a few minutes and then when we come back we're going to have our IDE up and running. So I'm going to pause this video now and back in a minute. Okay, so here we are back now, and as you can see we have our development environment set up. So on the left hand side we have our usual file tree structure. So there's the Rails app folder that I set up, and this is where in the future our Rails apps are going to go. Here we have the main body of our IDE, and we'll get to this now in a moment, and just below then we have an integrated terminal, which is very handy. So as I mentioned a minute ago, you will need to install Rails to start development. So let's see how we go about that. As you can see down here in the terminal, we're in the root folder which is called environment. And what we first need to do is type in a command that will install Rails without any Ruby documentation. So let's see what that is. So we type echo, quotation marks, gem, colon, space, hyphen no hyphen document, close quotation marks, space, 2 right chevrons, squiggly thing, / dot gem or c. Okay, perfect. Next we want to install Rails with the gem command. So gem install Rails, and what we want to do is we want to give a version number here to ensure we're all working off the same version, so 6.0.0, and off it goes. So as you can see, very easy, a very simple setup. All the software is pretty much here, as I said, except for Rails, which we are now installing. So if you followed along with the other steps, which you may or may not have, installing Rails and setting up Rails on a Mac and setting up Rails on Windows, you'll see here that this is much, much simpler. So I'm going to let that run, and there you go. We're back here now, and it's done. So let's check our Rails version. So Rails-V 6.0.6. Absolutely perfect. Let's just check a couple other bits. So we have Git installed already. Amazing. And we have Ruby installed. 2.6.3. The latest version of Ruby. Absolutely fantastic. No other setup needed than the really simple steps we've just gone through and then installing Rails. Okay, that's it for this lesson. I think you'll agree that this is so easy and so simple. It really is no hassle at all, as compared if you ever try to install Ruby on Rails on your own independent system or install it locally, it can be sometimes a bit of a nightmare, but doing it in the cloud is an awful lot easier. In the upcoming lessons, we'll look at developing Rails applications on the cloud environment as well as on our local systems. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next lecture.